Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Let's go. Let's laugh. We are imperfect after all.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Imperfect Us podcast.
I'm Leanne Camilleri.
And I'm Lisa Downs. As hosts of the Imperfect Us podcast, we share relatable stories that celebrate we are all perfectly imperfect humans, leading perfectly imperfect lives. We discover practical and evidence-based strategies that draw on the science of well-being and positive psychology that help us to uncover the barriers that might hold us back from being our authentic selves and turn them into opportunities so that we can show up more consistently, doing what we really aspire to do and who we want to be.
We acknowledge the Wadawurrung and the Kaurna people as traditional custodians of the beautiful lands on which this podcast is being recorded. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to other First Nations people who are here with us today. So, let's get started. Nathan Jones is an emotion researcher and communicator who helps people boost their emotional intelligence. Over the past decade, Nathan has trained multiple Fortune 500 companies in soft skills, undertaken a PhD in experimental psychology at the University of Adelaide, and has taught entrepreneurship classes at the Adelaide Business School. After winning the Australian eChallenge Social Entrepreneurship Award in 2019, Nathan founded his company, Mood Systems, to help leaders and teams boost their communication skills through the lens of emotion science. He has presented this original research at the World Congress on Positive Psychology, Umbrella 360, the QUT Leadership Coaching Conference, and TEDxUniSA. Nathan has also been heard by millions of people each day in his work as a commercial voice artist and has helped shape the brand identities of Nickelodeon, MTV and Channel 10 in Australia. These days, Nathan enjoys coaching and training others in how they can communicate their emotions and shape the world around them. Let's get started. Welcome, Nathan. We are so excited to be speaking with you today, and we'd really love to hear what inspired you to do the work that you do.
Thanks, Leanne, and thanks, Lisa. It's really good to be with you guys today on the show. I've been looking forward to it. Yeah, what inspired me? That's such a lovely question. And probably it gives me license to be very self-indulgent to tell you my life story.
Please do.
It all started when I was a little boy. No. So, I mean,
maybe not that far back.
Exactly. I'll keep it to the last decade. I mean, it's been a weird journey figuring out what I want to do with my life. I think you guys both being in the space of helping people uncover that and understand it. It's been a weird journey for me. I thought I wanted to be a teacher really early on. I did like a year of university in teaching and realized that wasn't it. And then I thought I wanted to be a performer in music and in voiceover. And I ended up recording a few albums, playing piano and singing, and I became a voiceover artist and voiced a lot of brands that probably heard my voice before on TV. But yeah, it felt like there was something missing in all that too, in that whole weird world. So I thought maybe I want to be a therapist. And I did my honors degree in psychological science and then realized I don't really want to be a therapist either. But looking back, I've realized that I'm really into communication. I'm really into communicating emotion in particular. So I'm now finishing my PhD in emotion science, and that feels really right. So I actually just arrived in LA yesterday to speak at a conference, which is all about emotion research. So I feel like I'm going to be with my people. I'm speaking there in a couple of slots, and I'm just feeling now that my mission in life is just to teach emotion to others and help them better understand themselves. So I was actually just thinking yesterday, in a lot of ways, I am that teacher and the performer and the therapist, but just in a completely different way than what I initially imagined I was going to do it in.
Haven't you into everything you do with your way of being?
Yeah, I think that happened weirdly accidentally, but I think it also happens to all of us like that, right? We look back, I think it was Steve Jobs that said you can't really connect the dots moving forward. It's only looking back and seeing where everything leads you to the next thing. And yeah, it's interesting how that big blender of life, it's all the ingredients in, and makes a pretty tasty smoothie.
Yeah, I love that about you, Nathan. I think since I met you back in 2017 at the World Congress for Positive Psychology. And It was amazing because you were actually from my hometown here in Adelaide, but I met you all the way over there.
Oh, Leanne, we are so global. We just roam the world.
But my appreciation of excellence and beauty, a cup of that was so filled to follow your journey because, I have your album. I have one of your albums.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. It makes for really interesting work and perspective. And I so love that about you and your work.
Thank you, Leanne. I so appreciate that. Yeah.
And I guess that's actually a really good segue into the next question too, Nathan, because, as Leanne and I have both been researching your research and the impact that you have had on others, your work is relating to emotions, and we're really interested to learn a little bit more about what you're doing in this space around communicating emotions, but without words. Are you able to just share a little bit more about that?
Well, I should say that I think, just so I don't get anyone offside, I think words are amazing. I love words. I'm a big fan. Actually, when I was a voiceover writer, I loved, actually part of the job that was super fun was getting this script and just having words on a page. And your job is to inject emotion into those words and bring them to life, which is really fun. And words are what we use to communicate, but they can be problematic, and particularly in researching emotion and understanding it. So Lisa, if you said to Leanne, say via text, that you were upset today, so if Leanne's receiving that message, is she thinking that you're angry, upset, or is she thinking that you're sad? Because upset can kind of be both, but angry and sad are very different parts of the emotional spectrum, which is fine. And if you're in conversation, you can probably get more of an idea. But the more I looked into it, in the context of research and measuring emotion, is that words can be really vague and slippery in trying to really pinpoint that emotion we're feeling. So since I'm studying experimental psychology, I'm like, what's the missing ingredient here that might be able to make this a little more streamlined? And so this crazy idea of color came to life, because we use color in our language all the time. If we're angry, for example, we'd usually say, I'm seeing red. Or if we're sad, we often say, I'm feeling blue. And so my research was really about seeing whether color itself could be a good way of retaining the meaning of words that we have. So at the Cognitive Neurosciences Lab at the University of Adelaide, we did an experiment where we asked people to assign different colors to emotion words like anger and sadness. And then we did a lot of geeky data analysis to merge everyone's responses together and just see how these emotion colors grouped together. And colors are technical scientific construct. You can see where they start grouping together. And we just found it was interesting that all the sadder words grouped together, and the glad and the mad words and the fearful words, they all kind of grouped together in really interesting clusters. And I thought, wow, this is maybe a new way that we can understand how emotions fit together without getting in our heads about it, but just intuitively seeing where they fit and then using that to more easily understand how we feel and track our mood and see it change like a color and a gradient throughout the day. So that's the general idea of what I've been working on.
My immediate thought when you were talking about the colours and the language that people use to describe an emotion or just to think of it, in schools, we have a lot. I'm a teacher as well, Nathan. We have, there's many sort of programs and even speech therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists who all use a lot of visuals and colours to represent certain feelings. And I know that there's, zones of regulation, for example, and the Ruler Project all have pretty much 4 colours that sort of determine, your feelings. But it's about supporting others, but particularly children, adults, everyone, about, because, often the first port of call is they'll say they're sad, they're happy, they're mad, but there's so many nuances in between. And it's that responsibility, I think, to share the language of how else do we describe that? Yes, you might be feeling anger, but are you angry, or is there something else that you're feeling? Frustrated, so I think having those colours are great, but also having the language there to help challenge, I suppose, or extend or amplify. What else could it be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're so right. And it's so important to know these words and to use them. I think sometimes for me, I find that when it comes to naming emotions, we can be so shut down to certain emotions. I know as a male, a lot of men feel that you're not allowed to be sad, and super unfortunate. I know also with some women, this is completely stereotyping, but this is kind of the problem. Women get stereotyped that they can't be angry. And so we all have both problems. I think a lot of us do. But I think we sometimes have an emotion come up and there's so many blockages that get in the way. We get shamed or we're in denial or all these things happen in real time. We're very good at shutting things out and shutting our bodies down. So I've just found that color's interesting because there's really no such thing as a bad color. And I think that analogy extends to emotion. There's no such thing as a bad emotion. And things come up and feelings come up. And sometimes I feel that the way in to understand that can be to think of it through the lens of color and just to notice it like a different shade coming up, different emotion just popping up in the color spectrum and noticing it. And then from there saying, now what words could I put to that color? Knowing that there is no such thing as a bad emotion. Emotions can make us feel unpleasant sometimes, but every emotion belongs, just like every color belongs. And if we're able to just name it and be present to it and see what it's trying to tell us, that it's just a piece of data trying to show us something that needs attending to, then maybe we'll be able to accept and understand that emotion rather than blocking it off and pretending everything's fine.
It's so useful in, because it can be hard sometimes to articulate how we're feeling, can't it? So as you mentioned, our emotions are data and sometimes it's hard to verbalize how we feel. But if we can use a color to help put that data into perspective, then perhaps the doors of communication then open a little wider because we're able to share more easily, I guess, how we're feeling. Would that be the right takeaway?
I think so. I think just purely in conversation, I've actually, since I have a few closer friends now that know I've been working on this. And actually, it was just a friend of mine yesterday when I was in New York yesterday morning and flew coast to coast yesterday. But I was
you
asking,
really are global.
I just like to,
to
drop that out there.
Yeah,
just want to put it out there. But I was asking my friend, how are you feeling? And he said, good. And I was being annoying and said, good's not an emotion. Give me a word. And he was able to, since we've had a lot of conversations about this color, he's like, well, I'm actually feeling it's definitely around the yellow space. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, but it's more like a canary yellow because it's less excited and it's a little more hopeful. And it's so funny because we haven't talked so much about this, but what we've found in this research is it's obviously so many cultural differences with color and all sorts of things to look into, but there is this weird kind of maybe too premature to say universal, but there's some interesting link where we have a sense that, I don't know, color does represent something about our emotional state. And I know that I and some of my friends have begun to use that language amongst ourselves to better get some clarity on maybe what that emotional space we're feeling into is.
It just amplifies the discussion, doesn't it, in the conversation, and builds that language for people to identify where they're at, what they're feeling. And like you said, you're about being more hopeful, all of a sudden the language becomes much more positive too.
I think so, yeah.
And Nathan, we understand from our field of positive psychology that our emotions are an important factor in cultivating our well-being. So how can colour act as that non-verbal shorthand for expressing our emotions?
Yeah, I think, we're just talking about how awareness is really the tool that it's good for. It almost gives us a new way of seeing and understanding and playing with what we're feeling and what that label could be. Because I've often been sometimes, because I've been horribly shut down from my emotions for a really long time. And a lot of that is, not knowing, not having the training or the modeling or, trauma, all these things that shut us down. But so often I'll be in a funk and I don't know it for sometimes a day or sometimes a week. And then all of a sudden you're like, why am I just not able to get out of bed? Or why am I just not able to connect with life in the same way that I do? And I'm just like, you know what? I am, oh, where am I? Well, it's definitely blue. I'm disappointed. Oh my goodness, I'm disappointed. What am I disappointed about? And I get out the journal and I'm writing and I'm connecting, but really awareness is the secret sauce here, right? That gets us into a better sense of awareness and puts us on that upward spiral, as Barbara Frederick, well, she's actually here. She's talking tomorrow, Barbara Frederick.
Is she? Oh, I'm so jealous.
She is, yeah. So
amazing.
I think it's a really great way of helping us in that way. And also just from more of the testing point of view with the lab, we're having participants at the moment use an app that we've created to label how they're feeling in the form of a color. And it's just a great way of taking that and comparing that to depression and anxiety and stress and seeing what kind of links are there, whether we can use it in a more nerdy way to predict emotion and have that as a way that's super simple without having to fill out a long questionnaire. We can just use maybe our watch or our phone to just log our emotion in a color or an emoji, or do that in a really simple, intuitive, subconscious, non-shaming way. So for me, that shorthand can come in handy when it comes to trying to track and understand and give a bit more context to the roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster that we're sometimes on.
I really see the value in that when you think about the last couple of years that we've had, the roller coaster ride that we've been on there. And many people I've spoken to have said, oh, I just feel a bit yuck, but I can't really put a name to it. And I can see how using color for that can help express that feeling, because we would all be experiencing it in very different ways. You know, for me, it might be a sadness. For another person, it might be anger. By using color, and you know, when you were talking about, you know, how you might record that, I had this idea of, you know, just this vision of me going into my Fitbit app and just, you know, putting how I'm feeling today kind of thing. But I saw value in it because, I mean, we are on a roller coaster ride all the time, really, aren't we?
We are, yeah. It's what we sign up for with life, I think.
Human,
can't escape it. Yeah.
I think that's what I loved about when you were talking earlier about the spectrum of colours too. And so immediately my mind goes back to working with our students where, you know, instead of having those 4 dominant primary colours as such, or even though they're not 4 primary, there's a couple of others, is that I think that the most important part about that is allowing the people we work with to identify the spectrum of colours and know that even though you have, like you were mentioning, red being anger, but red also goes into pink and to orange, and, you know, like that nuance along that spectrum is so emotion evoking as to where you might be. And, you know, the value in that is extraordinary. I can't wait. We start our next term next Monday, and I can't wait to actually jump in and see what we can do to do that and build the language around it. But then also, where is it they want to be? If they're feeling like this in the morning because something has gone really pear-shaped for them in the morning, and they're feeling, you know, maybe the blue or the red or wherever they are, where do they want to be for the rest of their day?
Yes.
You can just see so much when people are aware of what's going on and can have their own label for it. You know, anything's possible.
Nathan, what have you found? Have you explored much around trauma and colour?
Not from a so it's actually one of my favorite subjects, but it's actually from more of a personal point of view. I think we haven't in the lab at the moment done specific work around trauma. We are testing a couple of cohorts at the moment, a group with Parkinson's. I mean, that's another question with the degree of how difficult life sometimes is when you're needing to take dopamine medication in the morning, which is great because it gives you a great burst of energy, but it kind of wears off over time, and there's different feelings that come and go. So we're testing both on the medication and off, and being able to see how robust this little color model is. But look, trauma would be an incredible, I mean, that's a whole nother world. But I also have heard people have little theories that, as we just talked about before, with the inevitable emotional roller coaster of life, that in some ways, not to minimize trauma, but we've all kind of experienced it in different ways, whether it's as a kid, you forgot your lunchbox, or whether it ranges up to, complete PTSD or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. We all have different things that, to be human is to live with some of these feelings that we go through. So I'm saying this as a siren is appearing outside of my hotel on the street. So I hope those people are doing okay on their roller coaster right now. But it reinforces the point. To live is to experience the ups and downs of life, and to test that with a cohort that's specifically been diagnosed with trauma would be fascinating.
One of the things that I really love about, you talked a lot about how music can evoke certain emotions, but also build that emotional intelligence. Have you got any little tidbits in that area?
Yeah, I think so. I just love music so much, and it's so much a part of my therapy that I can lose myself and amplify the emotions that I'm feeling, and to really absorb myself in the stories and the narratives that are being shared in songs when they have lyrics, or if they don't have lyrics, to actually just feel into the to the mood. And funnily enough, music is actually what got me onto this whole notion of color. I was designing an app, and I was trying to think about if there was an app that could somehow speak to where you're at emotionally and provide music with that. What would be a way to select that music? And I was going through all these different words and emotion words and looking at all these different emotion models. And I'm like, well, if you don't know how you're feeling, like me, and a lot of the time, if you're so disconnected, what's a really intuitive way to do that? And so I love, actually, in my own playlists, I love tagging them with an emoji, with a little color emoji, with the blue dot or whatever. It helps me that when I'm in a moment, I can identify the color that I'm in and use a playlist that speaks to that. I kind of call them playlist prescriptions that we make for our future self.
That.
We're kind of in our own little emotion scientist doctor mode, and we're like, you know what, when I feel this, I like this song. So every time you come across a song that does speak to, say, we used the word disappointment earlier, so if there is a song that really speaks to the whole idea of disappointment, but still finding maybe a little bit of hope in that disappointment, and we think to ourselves, man, that's so good. That song would really work for me when I'm in this zone. We can drag it into that playlist and save it for our future self when we really need it. And for me, I guess the hot tip that's really worked for me in building out that emotional intelligence when it comes to music, but also just understanding ourselves, is red, which is usually mad. It's a lot of other things too, as we said earlier, but mad is generally the most common association. There's the green, which tends to be glad and growth and thriving, and blue is sad. So we've got kind of what Brené Brown calls the mad, sad, glad triad. And then another one I like to use as well, which is probably a nice fourth one, is scared. And as kids, we're often scared of the dark. So having black as the scared color is usually great. And having those four as playlists is really helpful, so that we know if we're mad, sad, glad, or scared. We can jump to these color-coded playlists and let the music further help us understand what labels we can put to that particular emotion.
I love that. Tell me, Nathan, what does black music look like?
It's really interesting. Just to be clear, obviously we're talking very much about the color or the absence of color, rather than any other cultural reference. But I would say that music that falls into that dark zone for me is something that isn't, well, I guess the way to probably best explain it for me is to see what it's not. I don't know if you've ever been in a dark space and you're like, oh, I just want to feel happy. And you put on happy music and you're like, oh, turn it off. It's almost like someone's just walked into a funeral and who's up for a party? It's it's probably not the right time and space for me right now. I'm really just in a space to be comforted. And so for me, I try to think about what I'd like to feel in a particular space. And sometimes when I am feeling a bit tense, it can be something that's a little bit more frantic and frenetic and kind of meets me in the moment. And I do like using this kind of fourth element. Obviously, when we have RGB, it's a very common way of seeing color. We have RGB cones in our eyes and our computer screens and our phones and our TVs, they have those, it's all made up of RGB, which is the kind of the building blocks of what they call the additive color model of emotion, where it's using light to create color. But I like throwing darkness in, because sometimes we can be in a red zone. When we take it darker, it can be really seething, right? Or the blue can be more of like a melancholy tide, but we take that darker and it can be quite a deep depression. And so it just gives us another variable to really start getting the super light pastels of any given color and the super dark ones. So
and
that would be the
part
most
of
handy.
Human life too, it's all the shades, which is fantastic. And that's again that awareness piece of where are we and is it okay. The other one I loved is that you brought up about with your playlist, and I really like that you call it the playlist prescription. I think that's hilarious. But I love that you talked a little bit about, for example, if you're needing a little bit more, like you talked about being brave or courageous, that you can have a playlist that enables you to do that. So if you're feeling like you're not brave and you need to dial that up, that you can jump into your playlist, have that jolt of joy straight away, and then it changes almost your mindset, which is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
What prompted my curiosity around the black was, in my mind, it makes sense to me around the red, green, blue. And then when you said around the black, I immediately, that could be a depression. It could be a deep-seated anger, couldn't it? Like, I see that as a few different things. And when I thought about how would that look, how would that feel, like in my mind, it makes sense what sort of music I might have to align with those other colors. But maybe depends. Maybe it's a bit more complex there. And that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. To be honest, for me, a lot of my music is in the main mad, sad, glad. That's usually where I stay. But I think in when we're talking about emotional intelligence, it would be, I feel like it's incomplete to leave out this emotion of being scared and having fear. And so for me, that darker shade really does speak to, that feeling of feeling isolated and alone. And I think it's an important one to add. It's so nice when we're really, if we think about what our core needs are as humans, we need to be seen and heard and known and understood, and all of those things that hopefully we get when we're a baby. And if we don't, we need to give to ourselves as we grow into being perfectly imperfect adults and doing our thing in life. And so I think to give ourselves the opportunity to be heard through songs and through lyrics and through movies and through friends and whatever it is, through a therapist, to be able to be validated when we are feeling scared, I think for me is super helpful. So that's where that darkness sometimes helps me better connect with the emotions I'm feeling and to amplify them in a meaningful way.
I'm so very excited to see how this grows into the world and how it'll be used. It sounds very exciting, Nathan, and I really congratulate you on the work that you're doing there. So
thank you so much.
Based on our conversation today, do you have a book, a podcast or TED Talk that you might like to recommend to our listeners today? And of course, we will share your lovely TED Talk and, in our links today.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Well, I guess by process of elimination, because I don't have a book yet, I'd love to write a book. That would be on my, that's definitely on my, on my bucket list. And I do not currently have a podcast. That is probably on my bucket list too. I'm taking notes from your fantastic podcast. But yeah, as you mentioned, I do have a TED Talk that I did last year, and that's all around, if anyone's interested in hearing more about this idea of using music to connect with our emotional state. I recorded that last year, and that was mainly focused on the idea of lyrics, how they're often overlooked in academic discourse for a start, but also we don't really think so much about the lyrical elements. So it's an interesting TED Talk. I play piano in it and sing, and
it's a brilliant TED Talk, Nathan. And I honestly felt all the feels throughout it, but the messages in it, and particularly when you played the one song but put two different versions of the lyrics. So it was a sad one. Oh, that really was like, and you could hear the people in the audience going, oh my goodness. That's definitely worth a listen to for sure.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Nathan, if people want to reach out and connect with you or find out more about your work, what's the best way that they can do this?
I would love any of your listeners to connect with me. I get so excited talking about this stuff and seeing other people get a better idea of how they're feeling and where they're going and what's going on in their life. So always up for a chat. I feel a little cheeky saying this, but this is the first time I think I've publicly said this URL out loud, because I don't think I'm allowed to say it. I'm months, weeks from finishing my PhD, and you're not meant to do doctor. But the thing is, I have a domain name that has doctor in it, the DR. So as long as I've got that preamble and that disclaimer, my website is drnathanjones.com, drnathanjones.com. And I have a few things on there. It's very minimal, but behind this splash page, there is a site that's coming together. But at the moment, there's just a couple of links where, one of them is for my newsletter, which is called the Mood List. And it's really just a big list of things that are going on that I'm finding and researching, and heaps of tips and tricks about building emotional intelligence, and all my little findings about color and music and even emojis, and how we can use different forms of communication to better understand how we feel and share that with people that we care about. So if you would like to sign up to that list, just head to drnathanjones.com and click the mood list button, and you can join me on the ride, the emotional roller coaster.
So doing that.
Going on.
Me too.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, we will share that in our show notes as well.
Yeah. And Nathan, just our final question for you, which is a really beautiful one that we've been sharing with all of our guests, and really to help our listeners build their own toolkit. And what we're asking everybody is, if you have one special or one favorite self-care strategy that you have that you might like to share with others that could be a potential tool for their toolkit.
I think that, and I think we've touched on this today, so it feels like a good one to throw in there, but this idea of accepting our emotions. No such thing as a bad color. No such thing as a bad emotion. They all belong. I just think about what, I don't have kids, and probably not my journey in life, but I was a kid. I was a child. And I know that as a child, what you really need is to be heard and validated in a way that helps you feel seen and accepted. And a good parent, they both nurture a child, they say, hey, it's okay, and they comfort, but then they're also quite corrective too. They're like, and once we've had a good cuddle and a cry, here's what we're going to do. And we're going to pick ourselves up and do what we need to do. And so I think my strategy that's just been very helpful for me is being that loving parent to myself, because not a lot of us got that, did we? I mean, and if we did, that's fantastic. It gave us such a great head start in life. But to be able to become that for ourselves has been probably the big game changer for me, to have that awareness of how I'm feeling, to name that emotion, to put a color to it if I need to. So I'm not shamed, and I'm not telling myself that I'm not good enough, or that that's not the right emotion, or that's not the right response. To accept and to love whatever comes up, and to be with that, and to nurture myself, and to coach myself in a way that a really beautiful, loving parent would. That's my strategy. And sometimes just using, thank you both. It's just, it's the way that we get to heal, I think. It's the way we get to move on and live the life that we've always wanted to live, knowing that we're never alone, because we can nurture and guide and parent ourselves through life.
Oh, that's just so beautiful. Nathan, we are so grateful to have spent this time with you this morning, or should I say this evening for you.
It's time for dinner in LA. Yeah.
We'll let you go on and have your dinner and have your rest and prepare ready for your next presentation. So thank you so much for joining us today. Wow.
I love him.
Wow.
I think I love him. What a human.
I have so much admiration for Nathan. As I mentioned, I've followed him for a while now, and I'm so impressed by the work that he does and his perspective. And I just took so much out of that conversation. How about you?
The same. And I think emotions do get put down and blocked a lot in our bodies, and it stays there, and it can actually make people feel unwell. But the more knowledge we have about our emotions and how they play and how they show up is so important to know, well, what do we do with them? Do we sit in that struggle all the time and stay there, or not, and move forward and try and get ourselves out of that struggle when we're ready? But having what you call the spectrum of the colours and using the colours to support that, for me, is such an eye-opener into how people can now start to describe the feelings that they have, because they have a colour to try and identify what it might be feeling. What colour, if you chose a colour, what would it be? Actually, mine would be a little bit orange. So what does that now start to mean? Then you can have a conversation with yourself or with other people about what that orange might look like. And I really love that spectrum thought. I can see that being in schools a lot more than just the basic red, blue, yellow, green. I think they sort of, when you have a smaller amount of colours, it makes you think of it, okay, well, red is I'm mad or sad or angry. Yellow is I'm really happy. Green is, oh, yeah, I'm pretty just right, ready for learning. Blue, oh, I'm so tired. But in actual fact, there's so many other nuances of emotions. And I think that spectrum really stood out for me.
I am taking with me today the idea of creating a playlist prescription for my future self.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think, just the point of, colour can help us. We can use colour to help us feel seen, heard, accepted, acknowledged, understood. It was powerful for me.
Yeah, it made me have a giggle because I have a little playlist for myself that I have, and one I call it Connection. He talked about in his TED Talk a lot about the being courageous or brave, but I have one to feel connected. So my mum and dad don't live in the same state as I do, so I don't see them often, but I yearn sometimes to feel connected to them. So I have this playlist of things that I know my mum and I have, for example, an ABBA song. And so whenever I feel like I just need to be near her, I just chuck it on and I feel like she's there with me. So it's so important that music can actually help those emotions and help you to feel connected. It's just crazy. But I really do also, the one other takeaway that I have is he talked a lot about the being a loving, kind parent to yourself.
Oh, yes.
How do you nurture, when you aren't feeling great? How can you be that parent that's going to coach you and encourage you? And just the way he described it as that loving and nurturing parent. I love that.
I love that too. And when he said that, I immediately thought about, our inner coach being our self-parent at times. Yeah, I
can't wait to see this emerging science that comes up and perhaps the app as well. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Well, okay.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye for now.
And thank you for listening to the Imperfect Us podcast. As always, we are extremely grateful to our executive producer, Brenton Ainsworth, for helping us to put this episode together. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you care about, and we would be grateful if you could rate this podcast on iTunes. To continue the conversation and see what we're up to, you can connect with us on LinkedIn. Just search for Imperfect Us. Bye for now.